Hey, Iyo. Like, I'm never gonna be objective for a SONA by Bongbong Marcos because the one thing I actually want to hear from him is an acknowledgement that what happened under his father was wrong, right? I mean, not even an apology, just an acknowledgement that that was a mistake. That's not something that a president should have done, right? So, to be very honest, like anything short of that, and it kind of just goes in one ear out the other. But in terms of like the bigger things, like going towards solving these things. I remember just the previous weekend, not this last weekend, but the weekend before.
Yeah.
I was in a consultation with Mama Meng Liberal again, right? So their si Kong Laila's team was going around to talk to their constituents, and I joined along for one that they did in Rizal, right?
Yeah.
And what one of the farmers there was talking about was their big problem was a lot of what's considered prime agricultural land are getting reclassified into commercial lands and end up, instead of using it for agriculture,
Yeah.
it gets used for for malls, for residences, subdivisions, whatever have you. And again, like it's hard enough to be a farmer now, and then you're losing the land that you can plant on, right? So I mean, there's a lot of local things you can do to address that, but nationally, the thing that really works towards that is the national land use plan, right? That I think see Senator Kiko Pangilinan and I think Kakabagao also. I don't know if she was doing that as LP or Akbayan, but they've been pushing that for the longest time, right? And we haven't seen there's no progress made. And one really concrete thing we can do for our farmers is passing that law to make it clear that this land really needs to be for agriculture, right? Yeah. And for education, I was just googling this yesterday, so I don't know if this is the updated number, but like for classrooms, the current backlog is like 165,000, and this is completely unbiased, right?
Yeah.
But that was zero June 30, 2016, right? So under the Pinoy administration, 118,000 classrooms were built, right? And they inherited a backlog of something like 66 or 67,000. So they left some over for Duterte to take over on. So this 165,000 backlog, this is like accumulated 6 years of Duterte, 3 years of Marcos. So Marcos announces that he's going to build 40,000 classrooms by the end of his term.
Okay.
And at first I was excited because when I saw the Inquirer post, it said 400,000 classrooms, and I was like, wow, that's pretty ambitious, right?
Yeah.
And I was coming to terms with having to give him props, only to find out Inquirer sort of misreported the number is actually 40,000. And that doesn't really, like year on year, on average, the Pinoy administration built just a little less than 20,000 classrooms a year, right? So 40,000 for the remaining 3 years is not terribly ambitious, right? So again, like it sounded like a SONA from earlier on in the presidency. But when you're at this point, you're coming off a midterm where you yourself admit you were rebuked by the people. And I agree with Marcos on that. I definitely think that was the message of this midterm election, that it was a rebuke of the Marcos administration.
Yeah.
You really need to do something grander, I think, to convince people that, yes, we hear you, that we weren't paying attention enough. And I think a lot of what happened was some window dressing, right?
Yeah.
So the speech was more predominantly in Filipino, which I think is a good step, right?
Yep.
There were a lot of, I'm pretty sure were planned applause lines, right? So the subtle call out for Prime Water, the less subtle call out of Baste Duterte by celebrating General Torre, and then talking about corruption and flood control. It's funny, right? So I would argue that if you hear like Arisa Ontiveros or Bam Aquino talk about corruption, it doesn't really make the news, right?
Yeah,
you kind of expect them to talk about it.
Yeah.
But when you hear a Marcos talk about corruption, it makes the news, and it's up to you to figure out why. But I have my own snide reasons for why that is, right? But yeah, I mean, again, very hard for me to be objective, but I think what my take is, this would have been a good SONA 2 years ago. But where we are right now, I'm not sure if it's enough to change the narrative on Marcos.
Okay. Well, first I wanna compliment you on how, despite you acknowledge you're not objective, but I guess how you framed everything, it seemed pretty objective. Like you were able to first of all acknowledge that
Mm.
you had your leaning, you had your bias. So I think that in itself is already like pretty humbling.
Right.
And then add to that, you were also, I guess, fair. I
Mm.
mean, you really looked at the data. So
I
kudos to
mean,
you.
I don't know if objectively that's fair, right? But first, I would recommend, like, if you want to have like that kind of attitude, do take social science in undergrad, and I don't recommend it that often actually, because if I'm being honest, if you want to make money, maybe fine, not that. Right? But I think one thing they really go out of a social science education goes out of your way to teach you is like reflexivity, right? I mean,
Yes.
you're gonna have your bias, but you need to
Yes.
know where you're standing relative to your subject matter in order to comment on it.
Yes, of course.
In order to comment on it in such a way that it goes beyond just opinion. Of course, like opinion and bias are going to be mixed in. Right? But thank you.
Yeah, because your opinion, your bias can also determine your like the direction you're going into.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
because like obviously you can be objective with the use of data. You can always say you're basing things off facts and all that. But like, what determines the facts you're using? What will determine the data you're using?
Right,
If not
right.
your leanings, your
Right.
your biases. Because all at the end of the day, like, we speak from experience, we speak from wherever we came from, our background and so forth. So that kind of pushes us towards a certain direction at all times. So it's good you like acknowledge that. I think that's also important too.
I think objectivity it's something that I think you work towards, but you have to admit that you're not gonna be
you're never gonna be
100%.
Yes.
Right.
True.
So yeah, I think that's I hope that's something more of us can practice sometimes. But anyway, I don't wanna.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully we get to eventually reach that point. But I also believe you cannot be 100% objective.
Yeah, exactly.
Ever.
Yeah, you can't.
You're not gonna experience everything all at once.
Yeah,
right?
you can't be 100% objective any of the time, right? And it's hard to be even a smaller percentage of a smaller percentage objective most of the time. So yeah, I'm not claiming to be anywhere near that right now.
I mean, so I guess going into like objectivity and how we perceive the SONA. I think you said it pretty well. This would have been a good SONA if it were done in the second year. I feel like his SONA last year,
satisfactory SONA.
Yeah.
Right.
Satisfactory.
Yeah.
But I think the SONA last year was a bit more tough.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? So it depends what we look at as tough, right? Because I do know I was not watching as closely last year for the SONA, if I'm going to be very honest. But I do remember that his two strong lines had to do with the West Philippine Sea and Pogos.
Yes, right?
Yeah. And and this is like a theme with Marcos that we saw leading up to the midterm, right? Mm-hmm. I remember talking with a reporter that was following the Alianza campaign during the midterms.
Yes.
And they were saying that, when Marcos speaks, he's not a particularly gifted public speaker, right? So not a lot of people are applauding, supporting, shouting, laughing when he speeches, but when he gives speeches. But it's when he talks about China and the West Philippine Sea that people suddenly like start clapping and get up off their seats, right? And one way to look at it is that it's something people really care about. But I actually take it from a different direction, which is I think that's the issue that he actually is very passionate about, right? So it's something I don't know why, but it's something that he seems to be quite consistent as far as being able to speak with conviction on the West Philippine Sea. So it was really notable to me that didn't appear at all in this SONA. Like I remember predicting, actually, people asking me, what do you expect to hear in the SONA?
The West Philippine Sea would be one of them.
I would have thought, just because it's something that he's good at talking about, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, in terms of like passion, right, I think, again, I'd have to rewatch last year's SONA, but I wouldn't be surprised if he came across as more passionate in the last SONA. But in terms of toughness, I mean, he did sort of vaguely not vaguely, subtly, I think. It was a fair call outs, right? He called out the Villars, right? And aside from the poor quality of service of Prime Water, which is talk of the town, he has an axe to grind with Camille Villar, right? Because she she ended up running with Sara Duterte along with
Yeah.
his sister,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's something that it was interesting that he showed some toughness there when
Yeah.
in the past he wouldn't.
Yeah.
The call out on Baste, well, the celebration of Torre, and
Torre,
therefore
yeah.
a call out on Baste. That was
Yeah.
that's another instance where I think he showed uncharacteristic like toughness.
Uh-huh.
And then again, I think the whole spiel on corruption, you can make of it what you will. And to me, I do think it's like a lot of cheap talk. But the way he talked about the way he addressed Congress on the budget, right? He had some. I'll have to go back for the specific wordings, but he said something along the lines of he wouldn't sign a 2026 GAA that is not aligned with the National Expenditure Program.
Yeah.
And then he said, I wouldn't be afraid. I will not stop short of returning the budget and then reenacting this year's budget. Which would be really horrible because this budget was like historically bad. But that's what you do if you don't pass a new budget, right?
Yeah.
So he's actually making a strong threat towards the congressman, which is don't put stuff in there that shouldn't be in there, right?
Okay.
And we just heard recently the story coming out of Chis Escudero's insertions in the current budget. I don't know how accurate or how reliable that expose was, but it sounds like he was speaking to that as well. Right?
Okay.
But so some toughness. I will, as a poli-sci person though, I will note that it's a little weird that you have a supermajority in the lower house who voted for your cousin and your son as majority floor leader, but you have to like really hold their feet to the fire as far as don't put weird stuff in the budget. Right?
Yeah.
You would think that someone with that strong a supermajority should very easily be able to shouldn't have to resort to threats like that
in the SONA.
In the SONA,
a public
right?
threat in the SONA.
To get what he wants as far as the budget is concerned. So it was toughness that I think people wanted to see from him, but that particular threat to the lower house I find a little odd as far as like my poli-sci brain finds kind of odd.
But no, at the end of the day, I mean, this is really like PR at its finest, right?
Yes.
Like their affiliation or his affiliation with Congress may be, it may be pretty close and all that. He may have a different affiliation with the Senate, but at the end of the day, parang when you're writing a speech like the SONA, where you have millions of people listening, right? At the end of the day, you're really just gonna think of what the people want to hear.
That's true.
Diba?
Although, again, if that's the case, I do think the reenacted budget threat is a strange PR move because
why?
That's because a reenacted budget generally is something frowned upon by most economists and I think the business community as well. Right?
Okay.
So signaling something like that I don't know if it has, right? But if you're the president and you say that there's an increased risk of a reenacted budget, that can have like negative consequences as far as investments are concerned.
Lalo na if the budget is unpopular.
Right. This budget in particular, right? So,
fair.
Parang weird PR, I think, if that's what it was. Although it is a strong signal, but there are you might get blowback to it. But to your greater point, though, I do think it was a pretty PR SONA.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you earlier that while I think a lot of our athletes do deserve to be celebrated, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm sure someone will correct us, but if I'm not mistaken, this is the first SONA since our pretty good performance in the last Olympics, right? So definitely our athletes deserve the shout out. But to devote that much time to sports in the SONA kind of leads me to believe that he had that whole section put in there just so he could have the punchline about General Torre. So to the point of being my PR, I definitely do think that's what the SONA was. And to be fair, that's true of most SONAs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even like President Duterte, I think, started the trend of hiring a director to sort of oversee the whole ceremony, right? And I think that continued on to Marcos. I don't know if he backed off on that because of all the typhoons. Maybe he wanted to scale it down a bit. But at least in the first SONA, I do remember there's still like a director attached to it. So it's definitely a PR exercise, right? And even if we're gonna be fair, even for Tito Noy, I don't think he never got like a director to oversee things, but a lot of work went into like those SONA speeches, right? And if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
people who look a bit more closely in surveys might be able to correct me on this one, but I do think generally his third quarter surveys tend to be a little better than like the rest of the year, Tito Noise, because he was quite. I think he was quite effective in using the SONA to continue like positive momentum as far as his popularity is concerned, or even stymie like downtrends in his popularity, right? So all of this to say, yes, definitely it is a PR exercise.
Yeah, and I think he was able to show that by, I guess, or his speechwriters were able to show that by answering the question, how do we piss off the least number of people possible? Like in each point, like when you congratulate election winners, you're not really pissing anyone off.
Oh yeah,
diba?
yeah.
But it's also a concession.
Right.
Diba? Or you talk about the 20 peso bigas issue.
Yeah.
Parang, I mean, the fact that you're addressing it means, you're doing something about it. It's a good message. It's not gonna do any harm unless you remind people of it. But everyone knows it naman, so it's not really a net negative.
But you're right, no? So like again, for like 20 pesos bigas, we could be talking about rice tarification in that area of the speech, right? Like a lot of at least in our circles, a lot of people are calling for a review of the rice tarification law because it was supposed to bring prices down.
Yes.
It didn't. Now we're subsidizing rice, which I don't know. I mean, economists will say that's problematic. I'm willing to take a wait and see approach to it. But long term, like we need to be looking at what are these how are we need to be looking at policies and not just like pouring money into like taking money from one place and putting it in another place.
Yeah, so make it more sustainable.
Yeah, exactly.
Then he was also kind of playing safe, like other things, like he didn't mention that 1% tariff decrease.
Actually, no, that was another thing that I was surprised by because I've always felt that Bongbong Marcos is most comfortable with foreign affairs. Right? And okay, like a lot of us gave him flack for the 1% decrease, myself included. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't seem like much. Right?
Yeah. I mean, if you mention it in the SONA, people just make fun of him. That's a net
maybe,
negative.
maybe. But I mean, all right, maybe his speechwriters were clever enough to say that, right? But to hear the way actually President Trump would talk about it, right? He's like the president of the United States acknowledged like the long-standing friendship with the Philippines and acknowledged our. I mean, in a way, you're right. No, I guess just on the face of it, a 1% reduction is in of itself nothing to write home about. So maybe just ignore it instead of talking about it. But a part of me did think that he would try to build on the spin that emerged from that, which was this was like a testament to like the strength of the relationship between the Philippines and the US. But yeah, I mean, I guess looking back, maybe your position's more correct and best not to mention it.
Parang there are also other things he didn't mention, like he didn't talk about the other controversial issues, like the ICC. We mentioned that earlier. We were talking about that, the even online gambling. Like a lot of people are expecting him to talk about it
because following what happened with Pogos, right? Although because the way I think about Pogos is that what I think sold Marcos on it was ultimately the security angle and like the Chinese interest angle towards Pogos. And for Isugal, I don't know if there's also like if there are foreign stakeholders here that he wanted to control. So I can see how Isugal would be like less of a priority for him. But yeah, I would think it's like low-hanging fruit, right? It's something that you could. Well, I say it's low-hanging fruit, but again, the question is like, from a PR perspective. But again, like, who are you upsetting when you say I will not even ban, but just regulate like online gambling? Right?
And siguro that's where the answer lies.
Yeah,
we're not making any claims here, but I mean, that's for obvious reasons, right? I mean, there's some things
we legitimately don't know.
Yeah,
right?
we legitimately do not know.
But like, why would you not? Why would you not like talk about it when it's the people are floating it as a real problem right now in our in our society.
I see this SONA as I mean, we were talking about it as a PR SONA, Marcos was overall saying, like satisfactory things, he was giving some solutions, talking about what he'd do for education, agriculture, and so forth. But there are also a lot of things he did not talk about.
Yeah.
More long-term solutions to a lot of the problems he laid out, like looking into the rice tarification law, etc.
Right.
And then he also didn't mention certain things that are a bit more controversial that would, pull him down from a PR standpoint. I see this whole SONA as a bit of a microcosm for like how politics has been operating the past few years, right? Like I mentioned earlier, like he was probably, or his speechwriters were probably thinking of how they could piss off the least number of people possible, like when they mentioned like certain points. And I feel like politics has been operating like that since maybe 2016, maybe since since a lot of these authoritarians started coming up and parang you being in the opposition meant a lot of harm, or a lot of the polarization kind of led to that kind of environment. And because of that, like you had politicians, staying away from the media. They didn't want to talk anymore.
Right.
And I don't know, was that social
it's
media
interesting
or
because
something?
maybe like, because I think Duterte didn't shy away from pissing people off, right? It's just he didn't care.
Oh,
right? So,
yeah.
to be fair, like I wasn't really watching SONAs too closely under Duterte either, right? But I don't think he would have shied away from taking shots at his political opponents, if not in the SONA itself, but definitely in a lot of his other speeches, right?
Yeah.
So
Duterte had some magic to him,
and Marcos is not doesn't appear to be the type to do that.
Right? Yeah.
But I guess, I do agree in the sense that if you're not the populist, right, Duterte being the populist candidate, right, then yes, I think not just here but around the world, the strategy has been to play it safe. Yes, exactly, play it quite safe, right? You've seen that a bit in the US as well. You see that I follow UK politics a bit more than maybe a lot of than other Filipinos do, but I think in the UK, in the Labour Party right now, you see that a lot too, where they're really not willing to talk about issues that you would normally think are like, these are like red line issues for us, right? Like for the Democrats, it was like, don't talk about January 6th for a very long time. Right? So it's interesting that Marcos finds himself in a similar boat where he, although again, one way to frame it is like he really cares about things like ICC or impeachment, and he's just not talking about it to stay safe. My personal take though is more along the lines of I genuinely don't think he cares about ICC and impeachment personally, which is why he doesn't talk about it. But maybe for some other things, he definitely. I get the sense that it's as much a character trait for him as it is a PR move, not to like piss people off. But I can see that. And what's interesting is like the Villars must be quite high on his shit list, if I'm allowed to say that. Because like they're short of the General Torre thing, and he didn't even mention like Baste. Right? It was just like General Torre is a great. In a way, it's like a backhanded compliment to Torre. You're a champion because your opponent didn't show up, right? So, but it's a good joke. But like the Villars got the harshest heat from this SONA, I think. I don't know if that's fair to say, right? But it's like, okay, this is someone who does not like pissing people off. And then he picked the Villars to be the ones he pissed off in this SONA. It's like, okay, what does that say about that? What does it say about that relationship?
And parang, there was the part that was most, I guess, direct. And it was very, very serious in tone. The Torre one was a joke.
This one was serious, but like, I think people, because it was coy, people, I think, found if not the delivery, at least the wording, I think people found it funny. I don't know if it was just applause or if there was some laughter in the reaction as well, right? But
ooh.
Right?
Hey there, thanks for watching the highlights of the Hey Eiyo podcast. If you enjoyed, why don't you like this video and subscribe to my channel? You may also watch the full episode by clicking the clip in the middle.